Our top story today, Unite is postponing all strike action that was planned from the 11th of September. It's to allow time for a further ballot of Unite members. The union has issued a joint statement with the government. Both sides confirm that they're going to meet regularly to discuss public sector pay with a view to reaching a multi-year agreement. The minimum entry salary in the public sector is also being increased in line with the United Kingdom. In a separate statement, a joint statement issued with all public sector trade unions, it was acknowledged that this year's pay increase marks only the beginning of a broader process to address recent years of pay stagnation. Nobody will have forgotten that there has been a cost of living crisis which has affected many people, but obviously the lower paid in our society more than others. We're joined this afternoon here at the Europa Point Stadium by the National Officer for Unite the Union. Good afternoon to Stuart Davis. Good to have you on the programme, Stuart. You've stepped away from the precipice.
Afternoon, Jonathan. And first of all, I'd like to say it'd be great to see Gibraltar back playing football here, so that's really good news. We've reached an agreement in principle. We've got to a position which a revised proposal, which we believe, after consultation with our pay working group and also a meeting of our public sector shop stewards yesterday, that they were comfortable for us to go forward with that proposal in terms of continuing to explore that proposal. But as you identify, that will be subject to a ballot of our members for them to confirm to us that they are satisfied or otherwise that that is the way forward that they want to take in relation to public sector pay. So there have been developments. We believe there have been positive developments, and those positive developments have enabled us to suspend the strike action and move to a further ballot of our members.
Because we thought that the discussion and negotiations in effect had come to an impasse, and that's why United called for strike action, which isn't just industrial action, to spell it out. It's pretty significant. It would have been very significant.
Absolutely. I think the position we got to is that when the budget announcement was made, clearly we were unhappy with the way in which the pay negotiations have been handled. And in fairness to government, they've acknowledged that and they've accepted that it should be better in the future. We weren't happy with the overall proposal either. Obviously, we balloted our members. We think it's right and proper and responsible for us to ballot our members, despite the criticism that we've had in regards to that. We then obviously wrote to government off the back of our ballot result to declare a trade dispute. We then met on the 6th of August with government, and there was no movement in respect of the public sector pay position. We were unexpectedly then called back in that afternoon for further discussions with government to see whether we could unlock the impasse, and there was some progress made, and there was talks around the 26-27 position. We are confident that the 26-27 position would not have been on the table had we not balloted our members and our members hadn't rejected it. And what was key was government was talking about that multi-year pay deal to recover the real terms losses in pay in full, and that terminology around in full is absolutely key for the union, and that's what attracted us in relation to further in those conversations.
So just to be clear, from your perspective, what you have agreed with the government of Gibraltar as Unite the Union is for a multi-year deal which recovers the losses that result from the cost of living going up quicker than pay in the public service.
So we've spoken many times about the cost of living crisis, about prices being hardwired into costs and cost of living. So what we've reached an agreement on is there's a binding commitment by government and Unite, obviously the other joint unions by association, to enter into a period of intensive negotiations from now until June 2026 to agree that multi-year pay deal, which will recover, as you say, the real term losses in pay since August 2019. So when there haven't been pay rises, but IRP is still going up, the spending power of our members in the public sector has reduced, and so this multi-year pay deal that has not been done yet. We've got to go into negotiations, but that is the aim in terms of coming up with that agreement, which will recover those real terms losses in pay. There's a lot of hard work to be done. If we can achieve that, and I'm not prone to hyperbole, but if we achieve that, I believe that we've got potentially on our hands a landmark agreement in relation to recovering those real-term losses in pay. And I'm convinced that we wouldn't have been in those conversations had we not balloted our members. Our members hadn't have rejected the pay proposal, and we hadn't had those further discussions with government under the auspices of a trade dispute.
For somebody who's just joining us, we're speaking to Stuart Davis of Unite the Union, the national officer, at the Europa Point Stadium, which is seeing works still ongoing, some welding works. I don't know if you can hear them, but they are in the background getting the Europa Point stands, the new stands, ready for this evening's game against Albania. Stuart, I'm going to ask you a few questions which I think people who have been following this story have on their minds. Did Unite overshoot by calling the strikes?
I don't think so. Our concern was, and again, I've seen government's response in terms of their press release, I've seen their interviews, whichever way you want to cut it, the engagement had stalled. We'd had correspondence with government which we were waiting for responses on. We had meetings, and that engagement wasn't actually there, so we called the action.
But they say that you didn't give them enough time to respond, no? I'm paraphrasing what the Chief Minister said.
But we met on the 6th of August. I wrote to them on the 7th of August, so I was able to write to them in less than 24 hours from our meeting. And then we're 3 weeks down the line and we don't have a response. So I don't think that's an unreasonable amount of time to wait. We actually deliberately held off calling action earlier to allow for those negotiations, to allow for that engagement. I'm pleased that we've been able to re-engage with government. I'm pleased with the progress that we've made. We've made issues and raised issues around the minimum entry salary because we believed that the UK pay parity principles weren't being applied. Government have now said that they will apply those subject to a positive ballot of our members. So we will see a number of members within the public sector see a significant increase in their pay backdated to the 1st of April 2025, which again is a significant achievement which wouldn't have been achieved had we not taken the steps that we have as a union.
Okay, but to be clear, you feel that you had enough support for not just industrial action, but strikes, because the government pointed to what it was trying to frame as, a less than ideal turnout in the ballot that you made.
Yeah, look, in terms of the ballot, we've discussed this previously. We had to have a short ballot period because we had to get to a position quickly in light of budget to reflect what our members' views were on that. Ideally, we'd like the ballot to be open for longer. That would have meant a higher turnout. So I have no qualms about our turnout. If we held the ballot for longer, we'd have a higher turnout. I believe the result would have been the same.
You're clear that you had a mandate, that you were doing
absolutely.
You have been doing what your members wanted.
Absolutely. But and since that ballot, we've been visiting workplaces. We've been discussing with our members the industrial action that they want to take. Clearly, there were some areas of the public sector where we couldn't take strike action. We were looking at alternatives around that. But we've said this time and time again. We don't take the calling and taking of strike action lightly. Our preference is to reach negotiated outcomes and negotiated agreements. Like we say, government themselves, in credit to them, recognise that the negotiation process was deficient around pay 25-26, and we all agree that should look better going forward, and there's already commitments and agreements in place for that negotiation process to be more meaningful moving forwards into this potential multi-year deal.
So this is a multi-year deal for the public sector. If somebody's listening and is working in the private sector, what would your message be to them?
Well, in terms of the private sector, as you know, part of our public sector pay claim included a number of elements that do benefit people in the private sector. We've talked about the living wage in Gibraltar, and in budget, government announced the commission on the living wage. So we look forward to that being convened and us having an involvement in that. And again, that formed part of our discussions yesterday. We talked about the removal of 0 hours contracts across both the public and private sectors, and also addressing the minimum wage. So that there are elements of our pay claim that have been met by government that do benefit private sector employees. And where we are the recognised trade union in the private sector, we have consistently achieved pay rises above IRP for our members in the private sector as well.
Stuart Davis, before we let you go, people have been talking as well about some Unite members jumping union. We know there's about 80, I think, at the bus company. I don't know how many you've lost there, but I was also asked, or it was suggested to me that I can point to Aquagib and Gibraltar. Are you confident that you're not sort of bleeding members, that Unite continues to represent the working people of the public service?
Yeah, it's not 80, it's more like 50. Obviously, we don't want to see any of our members leave the union, whether that's to become non-unionised or join another union. But we have seen groups of members from employers and departments where we previously didn't have bargaining rights move to Unite. So it's part and parcel of the push and pull of industrial relations. It's part and parcel of the competition between unions. That's the nature of it. We're still, have a very strong membership within Gibraltar, and we will continue to represent them to the best of our ability.
And finally, even if it's, just to be clear, what are the next steps? No strike action next week. What happens next?
Okay, so we've postponed the strike action that we called 4 days of action across a 4-week period. We will be balloting our members now on this revised proposal. Subject to our members accepting that revised proposal, we will then be entering into that intensive period of negotiation with government. That will consist of at least monthly meetings on the issues of public sector pay. And then that will hopefully lead us to this multi-year agreement in terms of recovering real terms losses in pay. If our members reject, then we remain in dispute, and then we'll have to regroup and understand where that takes us.
So no strike action for the time being, but not impossible that it could return to being part of the picture?
Not impossible, but again, it's right and proper that we put this proposal back to our members and we ballot our members, because it's important that they have a voice on something as important as public sector pay.
And some people think that union members sometimes have an appetite for demonstrations and strike action being, sort of the most significant form of that. You don't necessarily like striking, I imagine?
No, I don't.
It's not something you take lightly,
no, not at all. I mean, it's a tool in our armoury. It's something that we do have to deploy from time to time. We, as I say, we prefer to reach negotiated agreements. We prefer to have that constructive dialogue. It means we can avoid that. Ultimately, it will be a decision for our members. We will lay out the information to our members. We will articulate exactly where we got to, and that will be a decision for them to make in terms of whether we move forward with that or whether we remain in dispute.
Unite the Union's National Officer Stuart Davis, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.